Do we have to say anything after watching that clip?
That's
Good
not
evening
bad.
to everybody.
It's not bad for Alfa going up a hill, eh, Patrick?
Keep it nice now.
This is an awesome clip.
Hi guys, can you hear me?
We can hear you. And it's a fantastic welcome to Dawie de Villiers, Patrick Geering, Arnold Chatz. We were hoping to have Basil van Rooyen and Sampie Bosman joining us as well. I don't know whether Basil's overslept in Australia, but that's the reason why we're on at 11 o'clock tonight. So hopefully he'll be joining us soon. Sampie's trying to make contact, seems to have the wrong link or whatever the case might be. But in the meantime, we can get the show on the road. And I'd actually, there's so much history between the three of you that it's a tough choice as to where we want to start. I always thought that Basil van Rooyen was the first one on the scene, and Arnold tipped that card over by telling me that he was the first one on the scene. And then Patrick Geering came along and he said, no. There was a Geering long before both of them. So, Patrick, and we've got Roger McCleery joining us finally. Great stuff. You're on mute, Roger. You're going to have to get your microphone going for us. We cannot hear you at this stage. Hopefully you'll get the message there. But Patrick, in the meantime, if I can start with you, you're going to have to put this in perspective for us.
You hear me now, Patrick?
Yeah, I've got you. Welcome to you, Roger. Great to have you on air with us. But we're going to get your senior gentleman to join us in a little moment. We want the youngster amongst us to start the program. But he's going to tell us about an older version in his family. You had a phenomenal Alfa Romeo in your family. The first thing that I want to cry about is you sold it.
Yeah. It's a sadness, but we unfortunately can't keep all Alphas always.
But tell us about it, please.
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, I think, I'll just say I feel like the pleb amongst all of this Alfa royalty here. I'm just the amateur, so I think you're being a bit gracious. But yeah, I mean, we did have Geerings. Alphas is the only thing I ever knew growing up. And it's because it all started in our family in the 40s already, when my grandfather bought this car behind me, actually. It was Tazio Nuvellari's Scuderia Ferrari Monza. My dad went on to race it quite extensively. It had been brought to South Africa by his mechanic, Giulio Ramponi, in the 30s for the South African Grand Prix. And it stayed here until the mid-80s. And so, yeah, that's where we started out with Alphas and the love affair in our family.
You say, where has Patrick disappeared to now? There he is. You say he raced it extensively, but on which circuits in South Africa and what format did he race it?
Yeah, so I mean, it was an old hack racing car by that stage, but it was mostly club events and that kind of racing. Started out at Palmeetfontein, Grand Central before the Kyalami days, and then all over at Kyalami as well. And then lots of hill climbs at Krugersdorp, up the hill there, where it remained remarkably competitive. If you see some of the timesheets compared to some more modern machinery it was up against. So it was a phenomenal car. One of my earliest motoring memories. My job was to pressurize the fuel tank. It had a big pneumatic pump on the passenger side where you had to pressurize the tank, otherwise it coughed and spluttered. It didn't get fuel to that big blower up front. And it just, I mean, the sheer sound that it made, I mean, it roared, literally. It was, I don't think there's any other car that sounds quite as characteristic as a straight 8 supercharged Alfa. It was, I mean, I was tiny, but that memory will never ever leave me. It was an astonishing thing.
Well, I was hoping to have Basil on next, but Patrick, you've got two more Alphas in your collection. One is a genuine one, the other one is a replica. Now, before I get to Basil, I need you to elaborate on what those two Alphas are.
Yeah, so the one car that I have shared some track time with some of these legends back in the late 60s in the Springbok series. I have Danny Alderton's Alfa GTA, which was a 1300 that arrived in 1968 for the Springbok series, and shared the 9-hour with Arnold and with Basil. Basil, I think, was in 1750 GTV by then already, and Arnold, well, he was in in another brand. But but it shared the track, and yeah, it competed 68 and 69 Springbok series. And we've just finished restoring that car back into its 69 spec. And yeah, so that's quite a nice special thing. And then, yeah, I mean, we've been, the moment I could start racing, I started racing. And it was in an Alfa. It was in my Julietta Spider, of all things, on skinny 155 tires at the tender age of 18. But yeah, we've always been racing, and the other car that we race now is, as you say, a replica. It's a Julia TI Super replica. But that's, I think, Arnold raced some Julias in his time as well, the 4-door saloon version, and we raced that in pre-66 touring cars now. So that's quite fun. And in between that, I built a replica of my genuine GTA as well. And raced that a little bit too. So yeah, it's all fun and games.
Well, I've come to the conclusion that what we're starting here tonight is going to end up in individual programs following up as a series, because we are only going to scratch the top of everything here. There's just so much that I want to elaborate on. Roger?
Yeah.
You're a motorcycle man, but you ended up in cars.
Yeah, the way I got into Alfa, it was Harvey Thomas. You remember, he was the motoring editor of the Star, and he said, unfortunately, Bocelli, who was the PR at Alfa, had died, and I went to see Dr. Vito Bianco, and he said, we'd like you to start with us, but you answer to the sales market. That doesn't work that way. PR works through either the board or through the MD. So he says, we don't work. I said, well, you don't need me really, because I was big in bikes with Honda and that. And then he phoned me a day or two later and said, we want to. And I walked into Bocelli's office. It was like walking. He died at an early age and just left his office. It was under all the desks and pencils and everything. Anyway, the greatest thing about Alfa is that the comradeship that you get with Alfa people. You can hear now just with Patrick, the other Patrick, talking about his Alphas. It's just a love of Alphas. Everybody loves Alpha. You either love or you hate Alphas, actually. It's a niche type car that you've got to get involved in, that needs people to distribute. I mean, in the old days, we got up, thanks to Arnold and those other dealers who really got going on it, we got up to something like 1,300 vehicles overall a month. And now they're doing 3 or 4. So you need people involved. Like Arnold was the most successful ever Alfa driver in history, the number of wins that he had in Alphas. And he still looks good, and I'm sure he can still do it. And he was just fantastic. As a dealer, he's laughing about it. He knows he could do it. But Alfa, it was a dealership, so now you walk into Alfa dealerships and everybody's friendly and happy, and the ones in Pinetown and Durban. And it had that comradeship that you can hear Patrick talking now about, the love and attention they give, and everybody's helping him restore cars. I mean, it's brilliant. Going back to his grandfather's day. So it's lovely to talk Alfa Romeo. We'd love to see that badge out in our South African racing more and more. I know the Alfa Club does a good job of keeping it going, have Alfa series going, and really, it's lovely to see those cars out racing. Patrick, you may
Roger.
talk now.
Well, let's move on to our other guest that's still on screen here. See, they're all falling away here. But Arnold, that picture behind Clint should bring back some memories.
Yeah, no, that's you're seeing an abstract painting there, but there is another picture there, yeah, that brings back memories. Can I just make comment on first Patrick and Roger? I grew up in a suburb in Johannesburg called Northcliffe, and Patrick's grandfather lived in Northcliffe, and Patrick's father, Hugh, rode a Harley Davidson, and he was a medical student together with my brother, so the ties go back. But Patrick's grandfather had that beautiful Alfa Romeo in his driveway, which they used to start up virtually daily, and the whole of Northcliffe could hear it. And he actually drove it on the road, Patrick's grandfather, and I remember he used to fill it up at the service station at the bottom of Northcliffe, and he used to drive it on the road. You know, there weren't many police around and that sort of thing. And I don't know if you're aware of it, but Patrick Gehring comes from a fairly famous family. His grandfather was the Gehring of the Gehring windmills. If you old guys have heard of Gehring.
So he's very rich, really, Patrick.
Patrick,
Yeah.
and I could tell you something else that Patrick's grandfather used to collect cars. I think Patrick was at Buicks, old Buicks. That I used to see
He loved Buicks, yeah.
So I rode past the house on my bicycle as a kid. Anyway, that's an interesting side. And then getting back to Roger, when he joined Alfa Romeo, the guy's name who passed away prematurely was a guy by the name of Renato Borselli. And Bianco and Vito and Renato and myself, it was a wonderful relationship we had. It was like a family. We were part of them, you know. We used to socialize, have braais together, even at Basil's house. And incidentally, I've spoken to Basil. He somehow he's been trying to get through on his phone. And I said, all he has to do is go to the link on his computer.
Got it, Arnie.
So there he is.
Hey,
Good to see
guys.
you, Baz. Good to
How's
see you,
it, Arnold? Thanks for calling. I was going to wait for 8 o'clock. I was sitting there with the number and everything. But it would not connect on my phone.
Basil thought that there was 9 hours between us and him. He's been in Australia for too long.
Typical Australia.
Not only that, let me
Anyway.
tell you something else. I waited yesterday to get through because I thought it was Wednesday. And Wednesday was yesterday.
Oh, boy.
You blokes are so bloody far behind, man.
And to think this guy got distinctions in matric.
Yeah.
Well, in any case, good morning on this Thursday morning to you then, Basil.
Yes, that's right. It's Thursday morning and we're all together. Thanks for organizing this, Pat, and whoever else did. Terrific.
No, it's fantastic having you on board. We had Dawie de Villiers. He's gone missing. Hopefully he'll be returning soon. We've also been trying to get Sampie Bosman on board. But there's a few.
Basil Sampie, yes.
Yeah, so we would like to get the technical guys behind the scenes as well. Although you pass us both. You were the engineer and the driver.
Yeah. Listen, but you know that Sampie, I have not seen Sampie. Arnold, you see him often. I haven't seen him for 50 years at least. Wow, wow.
You know, what he does now, he handles a big fleet for that it's a big delivery company, 1,500 vehicles. He's in charge of them all with staff working for him.
Yeah,
Is that
And his son went and became a helicopter pilot when he had a chance to go racing. But that's what he's done. Sampie's a fantastic bloke. He really is, and is clued up. Making since you left here to go to Oz, he probably made I told him this in Italy, which I didn't like. I said he probably makes the fastest Alfas in the world. Oh dear, you don't say that in Italy. But they were quick. Thanks to you, Basil, getting it all going, boy. Super performer.
Yeah.
Basil, I made the statement to Arnold a little while ago, playing the chicken and egg theory. Who was first, you or Arnold? I got Arnold's answer. Now I'd love to hear your version of it.
No, you gave the wrong information. I told you that Basil started in Anglia before me.
They went to school together, I think.
No.
Didn't they?
Arnold and I, we went to different schools together.
Oh, there you go. But you know, you've spoken all about Northcliffe. I live in Northcliffe too, so there's a great history there. And Arnold's dad had business up in Northcliffe as well.
Yes.
So
Yes.
there's a big association with them. Where did you stay, Bat?
I lived in Emmarentia, which
Oh,
was
but upmarket, they were the lake.
So Roosevelt High was exactly halfway between Northcliffe Corner and Emmarentia. So it was it was the what would you call it, the area for Roosevelt High School students.
It was the West
But
Bank
Arnold
Cemetery
somehow
area.
was in Parktown because of his brother.
Yeah.
Is that why you were there, Arnie?
Hallo, Dawie is terug.
I think I've explained this to
Ja, ek is
what
terug.
happened was, I was at Northcliffe Primary and all my pals, when I got to Standard 5, Roosevelt had just opened and they went to Roosevelt, but I went to Parktown boys because my brother was there. So I had two lots of high school pals, my Parktown pals and my Roosevelt pals. And Basil was at Roosevelt with a whole lot of the primary school guys that I was friendly with. So I got to that's where I met Basil, and in our very early years, we worked on his Anglia engine at his parents' Rooyen Road house that eventually went into the Anglia sedan. And as I think I mentioned to Patrick, you won your first race at Grand Central on it with a whole piston for the last lap.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I went to Greenside Primary School, which was right next to Emmarentia. And and we had the most wonderful teachers and students that all did so well. Puddles Adler, do you remember Adler?
Yeah.
He was at Roosevelt High.
Listen, I want to just tell you something about Basil. Basil, that you and Koos Swanepoel were the people that brought big crowds to motor racing when you raced the Anglias and Cortinas and Mustangs. And that you are the start of the crowds coming, the two of you, and then other people like Arnold came in and drew big crowds to come and see the motor racing. And you still look very good, I've got to say.
Oh man, you know
Have
what
you
to
passed?
say,
Are you
Roger.
over 60 yet, Basil?
Yeah, I turned 61 last year.
Yeah, you've been lying for years.
I turned 82 in April. But what you don't know, maybe you can see it here, I had the most terrible fall about 2 months ago, smashing my head into the concrete surround of the swimming pool. Oh my God, you should see the picture of it. But
You must
anyway,
get to a doctor.
yeah,
No, seriously, I had that too. I fell for some reason. And they said your ticket needs fixing. Anyway, you're looking good.
Oh, mate, so are you. Why are you looking down so at the camera?
Basil, don't talk about hitting your head at the swimming pool. Talk about the Formula One praying down the straight that broke in half, man. That's interesting.
I was there.
I don't remember that one. Did I have a Formula One prang?
You did. You were strapped to an engine going flat out down a crowthorn. Actually, strapped to the bloody engine, yeah. Big time.
So let me tell you what happened actually, because a lot of people don't quite know. So going down the main straight on the very first fast lap, now understand it wasn't practice, it was a tyre testing session by Dunlop. I was to leave in 1 week to drive for Tyrrell in Europe full time. I had the air
Yeah.
ticket already. And then Mrs. McAllister of Dunlop phoned me and said, please, would you test some new
Mrs.
tires we've developed for no wings? Because Formula One banned the wings after my F1 race at Kyalami in 1969. So we unpacked the McLaren that was going back to England because it was on a carnet and drove it at Kyalami without wings for the first time ever. And we geared it for 30 kilometers an hour more down the straight, 9,000 revs. So off we go, just the mechanics and myself, Roger Taylor, and the Dunlop crew. So there were about 20 people in the pit. So the first lap down the straight, flat out, they see 2 inches of shiny rim each side of the right wheel. It was the first sign of what the low pressure tires we were running, because they were so wide, and the centrifugal force at that high speed pulls the beads away from the edge, and then they go back again when you slow down, and then they pull towards each other. I have a picture at the race before with John Love in front of me at Maritzburg, where my rim is showing, that part of the rim. And it just happened that at that speed, it was enough to release all the air from the well. But the driver doesn't know it's flat. That's what killed Jim Clark and had Graham Hill's big accident the year before. In fast corners, they didn't know why. So my car, as I took my foot off the throttle at the braking point, ducked left, because only the left engine braking pulled on it, because the other one slips inside the tire. And that drove me into the banking on the side at maximum speed. Now, no driver has ever come out of a Grand Prix car with a 6-point belt on. But how did I come out? Because the engine went beyond the grandstands at the end of the main straight. And attached to the engine were the full seatbelt harness. It just ripped it out of the car. And fortunately flung me inwards to land 90 meters from the car. But imagine this, without hitting a stone, a stick, a tree, a post. I was just the luckiest person in the world. But I thought I was dead. I was lying there. I was not conscious of the impact and flying through the air. But I came now to quite quickly. And I was laying there. I thought my head was off my shoulders. And I knew I couldn't come out of the car. So I thought my head was lying there looking because I couldn't move. And then Jackie Victorious arrived.
That's a laugh.
My
That's
helmet,
incredible.
my goggles had been, my face was bleeding because the goggles had been knocked apart, my helmet. And anyway, Jackie Pretorius arrived. He said, "Hey, Basil, Jesus, man, are you okay?" I said, "Jackie, just tell me, how did I get out of that car? Just wait till you see that fucking car, mate. You'll see how you came out of it."
Well, there's a picture of it behind Clint there, and there's nothing left of
Pardon
that.
the language, all the listeners.
Anyway, that was the end of my Formula One career. And then I went back to, what did I don't know, I raced something, forget what it was, Sunbeam.
You can say.
What?
You can
What's
say
that,
it.
Roger?
Probably a
I tell you what,
GT America.
You know,
Yeah,
the thing,
yeah.
Basil,
I hope so. Yeah.
we've put you on the
Arnold,
wrong
your
track
speaker
here.
is very soft. Arnie,
Yes, I
your
know.
speaker.
Yeah,
Yes.
Basil, concentrate
Yes.
on yourself.
Okay.
We're not talking about Formula Ones here. We're talking about Alphas. So let's get off that subject. I'm sorry I
Yeah,
introduced.
come on, man.
No.
Okay. Enough.
No
You're
complaints from
dead
our
right,
side.
Arnie. You are dead right. So anyway, but you guys all know about this great bloody GT America. It was just it was the most exciting couple of months for me developing it. Wow, well,
GTI.
and that of course was such an opportunity to reward Arnold for all his support, because he'd been racing Renaults and Mazdas.
Volvo.
No,
Volvo.
Volvos. Basil, get it
Volvos,
right.
yeah.
Volvos.
And Borgward. Don't forget the Borgward.
No.
Volvo.
Just stay with Renault, Volvo, then Alfa. There were no Mazdas.
No, there was no Mazda. But I was thinking Borgward.
Automart. Anyway.
Okay, so anyway, the Alfa was an ideal time to give it to him, and Arnie took it to greater heights. It was wonderful.
He did.
Basil,
Yeah, sure
the
did.
GTA development, you laugh about it now, but you did some amazing work on that car. It was pretty slow when you got it.
Yeah, look, to put it into perspective, absolutely. It gave 132 horsepower on our Schenk dyno, witnessed with Sumpy, etc. Now, it was supposed to give 165 horsepower from Auto Delta. So I went to Joe Williams, the MD of Alfa, who'd come to me and asked me to take the car over. And I said, Joe, please tell Auto Delta to fly their engineer out here. If the engine gives 145 horsepower, we'll pay for him to fly out. Superformance will. But if it, forget 162 horsepower, it's got 135 horsepower. Anyway, then I started this massive engine change, engine port sizes, and increasing it to 1830 cc's because it was a 2-liter class. Now we could run a 2-liter, there was a 2-liter Alfa, but with a long stroke crank. I wanted to run the 1600 short stroke crank, which I did, and did a lot of amazing things, and Marla made pistons for me and angled the ports in at offset to have tumble in the port and exhaust manifold and a throttle slide with Lucas injection. Now this was possibly the most ambitious thing to do. When you have Lucas injection, it's got a scroll and a high pressure pump, and this scroll distributes fuel to 4 cylinders if it's a 4-cylinder scroll, which we did. And we took injectors like my Brabham had, my Brabham F1, and built a throttle slide like my Brabham had, copied all that. Then, how do you get the mixture of this scroll to be correct? It had a cam that pushed. It's so clever. I must just try and explain this to you. Arnold will hate it. In a little tube in the scroll is a shuttle.
Basil, you
Yeah.
know what TMI means? TMI.
Yes, it's too much interruption.
TMI, Basil. TMI.
Okay. Anyway, we set this injection up for the engine, and it gave 188 horsepower. Now, we took the car to Kyalami. It lapped 4 seconds faster than my Mustang and 9 seconds faster than when, who owned the Thompson brothers when they ran it at Kyalami.
Keith Barrington Smith.
Keith Barrington Smith.
Yes, 9 seconds. It
Sure.
was unbelievable. But as I told Arnold, it had no head gasket. Because we had offset cylinders, we couldn't get a head gasket made in time. So we ran no head gasket at all, except for O-rings in the cylinder.
Sure.
One big O-ring all the way around the cylinder. So there was no water leakage outwards, but we had to stop compression leakage out of the cylinders. So I knew that dragsters run with no gasket. So we put Loctite on the top of the cylinders and torqued the head down. Because of heat and everything, it would leak compression into the radiator until it overpowered the radiator cap, and it would just hold enough water in the engine for a race, for a 12-lap race. And I handed that problem over to Arnold.
Did you know that, Arnold?
Thanks for nothing.
Listen, I just want to tell you one thing. Talk about changing to that fuel injection. When we got the GTV 3-litre, Dawie, remember this? Some people didn't understand Lucas fuel injection. So we swapped them over the Alfa 6 saloon cars and put carbs on. And there's a couple of customers had fuel injection they didn't know they're getting the older Alfa 6 saloon. Because some people could understand the downdraft Weber and had all the jets, etc. for us. The only ones in the world, actually. Is that true, Dawie?
Roger.
Correct.
Sorry.
Davie's come along. Hello, Dawie.
Roger. Sorry, and
Yeah.
Dawie. Can I just give Roger, if that's what they told you, that wasn't exactly what happened.
I believe every story.
Bianco had these Alfa 6 sedans standing at the assembly plant with
That is true.
downdraft carburetors.
Yeah.
And in Italy, they'd already launched the fuel-injected motors. So he thought, now, what am I going to do to get rid of these things? So he took those engines out and gave them to Sampi to convert to 3 litres with the carburetors. They didn't have fuel injection. And he then took
so we learn something every day.
He then took the fuel injection engines out of the packs, the CKD packs, the knockdown packs, and put them into those sedans that were standing at the plant and turned them into fuel injected cars. That's why they had carburetors. But
That's my man. He was a great motor man.
That sounds more
Somebody
believable.
will confirm that he says he got more horsepower out of the carburetors. Dawie may be able to confirm that than they could get out of the fuel injection.
Yeah.
Dawie
That
may say,
is absolutely correct.
there you go.
If I was allowed to change this,
They built a few with fuel injection. They weren't as quick as the cars with the carburetors. Enough detail.
Can Dawie confirm that?
Dawie, you'll have to fill in the gaps here.
Yeah, well, that was all Sampi's brainwaves, and it worked out extremely well. And that gave us quite a bit more horsepower than with the fuel injection. And I think that was part of the success of that whole project.
well, isn't that interesting? Just the opposite from our experience. But just, Arnie, allow me to just go off the Alfa subject for 1 second. You probably all know that I've been very busy on an engine that I've invented over the last 8 years. And just a year ago, we got a group of investors very interested with big money, and the engine went down to Melbourne to be independently tested by anyone, for which they would pay. And anyway, eventually a guy from Motec, you may have heard of Motec, they are the biggest independent injection company in the world for aftermarket applications, MOTEC.
Yeah.
And this guy took the engine on, and it went down to him with carburetor on it, a big downdraft Weber. It's a 2-cylinder V-twin, and he changed it to fuel injection. And all he's done is delay it, and they've had lockdowns and fires, and I'm trying to convince him to run it on carburetors just to do the comparison between a pivot valve and a reed valve, and he's finally doing that. Back to carburetor. Sorry about that.
There you go. Ask Dawie. He'll agree with that.
Yeah.
Anyway.
We used to always say that Dawie at Glenwood Motors was always the R&D department. anything you want to change and try out, Davie's the one that did it. So that the factory cars look 100%. Is that
I'm
true,
not so
Davie?
sure about that. It was all done for me by Sampie.
Oh dear. Because all we ever wanted to do, and Arnold was helping and so was Dawie, was to beat the BMWs in those Ford V8 Sierras, which we did. When we got that 3-litre motor, we blew them away. They didn't believe they would totally stand it, but that's what Arnold and Nico Bianca, he was a brilliant driver, all did. It was fantastic. And Dawie is very much part of that team.
So where's Nico Bianca?
Can I add
Who?
again to that?
Vito Bianca.
You said he was a fantastic driver.
Oh, that was Nico the son.
Yes. So where is he?
He got killed in a Porsche at Killarney. I was actually sitting in Vito Bianca's office when he got a call from Killarney to say that your son has been killed at Killarney. How's that?
Oh my God. I never knew that. Wow.
Oh, he was good. He was good. He was good at everything. Golf, rugby, everything.
Basil, it was before you left that he was killed. But
yeah,
you know the situation. We went off the subject there. But what I wanted to say was that there was a car magazine published, and I've got the copy. I think it was 1982 or 83, where they did a road test on the BM homologated car and the Alfa, and Car Magazine, on the cover, it says the fastest production car produced in South Africa was that 3-litre GTV.
That's my boy.
It achieved what it had to do, and of course Sampie added a few things onto it, like an exhaust extractor manifold, and you know, made it a very quick motor in standard form, which is what all the manufacturers were doing, including BMW, and Patrick will vouch for that, I'm sure. The homologated cars that came out of this country were unbelievable.
We're fantastic.
It's true. Very true.
It's true. That's for sure. What the guys did here, the mechanical engineers here were fantastic.
Arnold, I would like you to speak about yourself for a moment. Roger made the statement that you are the most successful Alfa Romeo driver internationally. That is quite a compliment. But put it in perspective for us. I want you to just talk about your own career. Take us from the early days and put us into the era of the Alfetta GT V, the 2-litre.
Well, I won't bore you with the years. I won't bore you with the years before the Alfa, but in fact, it was through the auspices of Basil that I actually raced my first car, which was a Renault Dauphine. I raced a Borgward, but I did one race in it in '69.
He admitted it, Basil.
I raced from '62. I raced a little Dauphine. And Basil said to family friends of ours, the Lawsons, I mean, one of my best pals is together with Basil, is Matthew Lawson, who lives in London. They were the Volvo importers. And they got Renault for Johannesburg. And Old Man Lawson wanted to start racing a Renault. And Basil said to Old Man Lawson, because Basil had been driving a 544 Sport Volvo, and he said, use Arnold. And that's how I started. So let's skip all of that, because after the little Renault Dauphine, which was a Gordini, then came the Renault 8s, which I drove with Scamp Porter in 1964. We finished 4th overall in the 9-hour race. Believe it or not, it was a wet race, and because we had narrow little Michelin X's on it, and the fast stuff couldn't get their power down. It was Ferrari first, Ferrari second, lightweight E-Type Jag third, us fourth, and Bobby Althoff in a Cobra fifth.
Arnold, that's driving for you, boy.
Brilliant.
Anyway, then I was promoted to Volvo for 65, 66, 67, and then I inherited Basil's GTA as he went off to go and do better things in Formula One. And the GGA, Basil describes it perfectly. It was so fast that the first time, compared with what I was used to, that my first race was in Killarney, which, as we all know, is a pretty tight circuit. And I can tell you, I did 5 laps in that car, and I had to lie on the counter to catch my breath. I couldn't believe it. I found that I wasn't able to look at spectators between corners anyway. I then, it was amazingly quick, the car, but as Basil said, there were a few problems. And then Sampie Bosman got involved, and it became the GT America, in which Toyna Hazemans won the European Touring Car Championship a few years, and we copied that car, and I raced that for a few years. And I want to remind Basil about something, that when I went over to go and fetch suspension for that car from Auto Delta, which was the racing division of Alfa Romeo, Carlo Kitty, who headed it up, I was going to bring all that suspension back with me. He said, go to Zandvoort and go and watch Toyna Hazemans racing our car there. And by coincidence, Basil was at Zandvoort because he wanted to buy another Formula One after his big prang down the straight. And he went there to have a chat with Robin Herd to buy one of his cars.
Yeah, the March.
And March. You had second thoughts, and you decided, hang on, this Formula One thing, maybe I should actually step away from it, if you remember. And I was at that race watching the GTM with Hazemans in the car and brought the suspension back, and it just was like 2 seconds a lap quicker, Kyle Army, with that suspension.
Wow.
Fantastic.
And that's when it took off, and I see there's a photograph of the car there. That car's got that suspension in it, the GTV, and it was the beginning of the success. We went on to run those that suspension in our South African modified production car race. The first one was the Berliner in '72, which won the modified saloon car championship. And then we took a break in '73, and '74 we put it into the Telefunken Alfa GTV. It looked like a GT America, and we won the championship in that car in '75. And then we switched to the Alfetta GTV, which was brought out by Auto Delta, by Alfa at the end of '76. And it was driven by Merzario and, I forget the other one. And that had a 16-valve engine in it that we weren't allowed to use. It was a left-hand drive. Anyway, it stayed here. It was converted to a right-hand drive, and we put our normal modified 2-liter motor in it. And we went on to win the '77 championship in that car. And then in '78, we didn't win again. And in
Arnie, going back to that championship. Arnie, going back to that championship, who was your opposition?
Man, I think it was a guy by the name of either Van Rooyen or Kaiser.
No. Who was your opposition when you ran when you won that championship in the GTAM?
Man, you know, it was mainly BMW that were against us for the championships, Baz, from what I can remember. Can you correct me?
No, I don't know.
No.
Well, your big GTA years was against Peter Goff in the Meisner Escort.
No, that was the GT America was Peter Goff, but the GTV Alfetta in '77 that we won. Sorry, and '79 and '80 we won the championship. There, it was the BMWs, and we were in a different class, but it was Kaizen and me. I think Kaizen won the championship in '77. I think he won it in a BMW.
And Arnie, what championship was that?
Modified Saloon Car Championship. It was sponsored by the Star to start with. You remember they always
Harvey Thomas got that guy, yeah.
It was sponsored by and of course Harvey Thomas was the motoring editor.
Was that Group 2 or Group 5, Arnie?
No, it was South African modified, because we weren't allowed to run Group 5 here. We had to run a car that was produced in South Africa,
Yes.
fully modified.
Yeah.
We could
But
not
Group
race
5
those.
mods. Yeah.
It was when you and I started, there was Group 1 and Group 5, and Group 5 was international, fully modified, Group 5.
Yeah.
But the GT America, we couldn't run that car as it was run after the first year, because we had to run the cars as they were produced in this country, which meant we had to modify our local motor. We couldn't run those special narrow heads and all of that sort of thing. But I mean, Sumpy and the other guys, did such an unbelievable job that car was internationally competitive. Amazing.
Excellent.
The guys here were just
I
unbelievable.
want to ask you a question quickly, just before you go on, Basil. Arnold, what did the A in GTA stand for?
Amalegato, whatever
something
they
like
use,
that,
the
yeah.
word
Alligator. So no, for lightweight. It only weighed 850 kilos, as I remember. Something like that. It's light for a car.
That was the GT. I think it was something to do with homologated with all the lightweight components.
Yeah.
And it had aluminium doors, aluminium boot, aluminium bonnet, and
Plastic door, plastic windows.
Correct. And when we went to GT America, we had to pull all of that off the car and replace it all with steel.
Sure.
Those were the days.
You still haven't touched on the topic that you set the record for the most consecutive class wins.
Well, I won 21 races in a row with that car. But I can tell you, I don't think it held the record at that time.
Yes.
But later on, Henny van der Linde
Broke it, yeah.
drove the Skyline Coupe, the 2.8.
Yeah.
And he broke that record.
He did 72, unbroken. 72.
Yeah.
72 races he won in a row.
I think it was 72 or 52, I'm not quite sure. But,
I think 72. Yeah.
and when we did the 3-liter GDV modified, it used to do Kyalami in the 32s, 132s, and those were the times that Henny was doing in that Skyline, fully modified. So we were there in the ballpark, but as Dawie will confirm, Alfa Romeo started slowing down then because they were already on the withdrawal path. And and they lost their enthusiasm, unfortunately. As a matter of fact, the tragic story of Abel D'Oliveira's death was that he went to race their modified 3-liter in Cape Town, and on the way back in the Alfa Romeo tow vehicle, which was a Chev V8 panel van, which broke down, I think, in Bloemfontein. And then Sumpy sent down another vehicle, and they had this, and it was being towed back by the other Chev V8. So there were 3 in a row. A Chev V8 towing a Chev V8 with a trailer with a 3-liter on it. And the guy in the front fell asleep. And it resulted in the second van rolling together with the 3-liter on the trailer, and poor Abel D'Oliveira was lying on the seat behind the driver and was thrown out of the vehicle and tragically didn't survive more than the night and passed away.
Well,
that's what happened there.
Sure.
And,
Can we get back to happy stories, Patrick?
Yeah, Dawie, I would like to, since Arnold touched on the name now, the Cowboy of Kyalami was your star driver, and that was Abel D'Oliveira.
Yeah, it was a sad story, but he did us all proud, and he was very special, together with Nicola Bianco. And unfortunately, both of them are not with us anymore. But it was always a fierce battle. And Nicola, in fact, won that battle, and Abel was second, but extremely tight and extremely competitive racing, which we all enjoyed.
Yeah.
I just want to
And
say
that's
one
that.
thing about Abel, is that if it was raining, the fastest guy on the track was Abel Dawie because his glasses were thick as bottle top bottom, you know. He didn't know it had been raining already. And he used to fly. Excuse me, and I always remember that, but he was a character. No, we've had a lot of characters. Right. Listen, I might have to switch off now because the battery just about finished on this phone. Patrick, thanks very much, and lovely to see you, Basil, and lovely to hear those stories.
Roger,
We'll talk to you again.
great listening to you. Thank you, mate.
Bye-bye.
Keep well.
Cheers, Rog.
Cheers.
I'd like to comment on what
Cheers.
Roger said about Abel. We used to say about Abel, he used to wear like fishbowl glasses. I mean, it was unbelievable. His car control was just ridiculous. And we used to say the reason he was so quick was that those glasses, he didn't know that he was already at the corner. By the time he brakes. And by the time he realized it, he was in the corner, and his sideways car control got him through the corner.
Well, as Roger just said, when it rained, he couldn't see the rain. So he just drove like it was dry.
No, that's what we used to say about Abel. It's a pity something couldn't come on.
Absolutely, I would have loved to hear him as well. But gentlemen, as I said, I think we're only scratching the top of this thing now. I would love to invite all of you individually to do another program at some time and get a little bit more in depth. Basil, we could talk all day about you. And we're not even.
Thank you, mate. Thank you for your interest. I don't know how you guys are interested in these old parts. you know, I still get an envelope in my post box, 1 or 2 a week, from Europe, from England, with photographs in them, big packets. Please sign these for my collection. From 50 years ago. I can't imagine sending a photograph to a singer to ask him for his autograph. It's wonderful that these people still have passion for old stuff.
Well, I wouldn't call it old. You're very, you guys cast the foundations for motorsport as we know it today. Alfa Romeo, sadly, was big in South African motorsport. I would have loved to have said that they still are. But if I look at Dawie, Sampie, Basil, Arnold, and the Geering family, you guys wrote the history of Alfa Romeo in South African motorsport. And that must never be forgotten. And you can be extremely proud of what you achieved. Each of you have a different story to tell, which I would love to get more in depth on another occasion. Basil, for instance, Alfa Romeo was a little part of your life. But you wrote your chapters. We can spend weeks on air chatting to you. Arnold, to me, is a legend as well. When I was a little boy, and I'm happy to say this, I'm a lot younger than you guys. you guys were winning championships when I was born, but doesn't matter. I'm still an Alfa Romeo enthusiast, and as a kid, you cast the images that I still remember today. That I consider iconic in South African motorsport. And a GTA must be on 3 wheels. If you show me one that's running with a sorted out suspension with all 4 wheels on the ground, it just doesn't work for me. That's what it must look like in a corner. And you guys, behind the scenes, we must always remember the people like Sampie Bosman and Dawie de Villiers. They never get the credit, I believe, that they deserve. In your case, Basil, maybe a little bit different. You were the engineer and the driver. But in Arnold's case, and then the Abel D'Oliveira's and the Nicola Biancos, they relied on people like Dawie de Villiers and Sampie Bosman to prepare these cars for them, in which they entertained the crowds and achieved marvelous results.
Yeah. Anyway, we were very lucky to have that platform in South Africa of motor racing. And if I can just remember Francis Tucker and who was the clerk of the course in Cape Town, the lawyer. Can you remember? Still going?
Yes.
No.
Brian
He
Hoskins
passed-
has been there for so long that I believe he's the only one.
Yeah,
Anyway,
he passed away,
they were
but
all
I forgot the name.
Such capable guys. I mean, Francis Tucker brought Kyle Army to being a world Grand Prix circuit for 17 Grand Prix. He was incredible, man. Yeah.
Okay. We can carry on all night. And in your case, Basil, you're the only one that's going to look forward to the day now.
Yeah.
But I've got to respect the other people as far as time is concerned. It's rather late at night in South Africa.
Exactly.
But thank you for your time. And I'm making the request on air now that we could have another opportunity and get into your careers in depth and look at it from another perspective. Patrick, thank you.
Patrick, if you do, as I mentioned in an email, why not do it on the weekend? So you can do it at 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning, and it'll be 6 in the afternoon here for me.
Yeah.
Saturday or Sunday.
We'll certainly consider that, and I think Byron behind the scenes will appreciate that as well. Then he can go to sleep before midnight.
Exactly. And I'm worried about Arnold. He's looking so tired, sleepy there, man. Arnie, you're looking so well, mate. I'm really nice to see you looking
really is the
so
picture
happy.
that good? Thanks,
Hey?
guys. But then on the other hand, so do you. And it's amazing.
I'm very lucky.
You can-
I've been
you can
through
take
hell
a
for
bow,
8
boy.
years. So
You
very
can take
lucky,
a bow.
man.
You are indeed. That's wonderful.
All right, gents. Catch up soon. Don't know how we exit here. How do we exit?
You just
actually
leave the
turn your
studio.
computer off, Beth.
Yeah, so after you've got the apex.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I look forward to speaking to you again. Thank you, Clint.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you,
Thanks
Byron,
a lot.
behind the
Thank you,
scenes.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone. It was
Together.
fun.
Okay. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Ciao.